The White House just held a train wreck of a press conference. Donald Trump press secretary and propagandist Karoline Leavitt went off on a rant about how unfair everything is, complaining that the media keeps saying Trump's meeting with Putin was a disaster. His meeting with European leaders was a disaster, and that came off looking weak and pathetic. And her response to Gary about how it all so unfair. Just watch her meltdown. Here, play this clip.
However, one thing that has absolutely not changed is the media's negative and downright false coverage of President Trump and his foreign policy accomplishments. From the beginning of this entire process, much of the left-wing media has been actively rooting against the President of the United States in the pursuit of peace. Initially, the media ridiculously claimed that President Trump was somehow beholden to Russia for even agreeing to have a face-to-face discussion with President Putin inside of the United States. The media said President Trump was making a grave mistake by, quote, legitimizing Putin. They were aghast that President Trump would treat another world leader like a world leader. The media relentlessly attacked President Trump and claimed he suffered a, quote, major defeat for not immediately emerging with a final agreement, even though he said heading into that meeting, this was a meeting to listen and to understand how to move the ball forward. All weekend following those historic U.S.-Russia bilateral talks, we listened to clueless pundits on television trying but failing to claim that the president had failed. The so-called experts in the foreign policy establishment, whose record is nothing but endless wars, trillions of wasted taxpayer dollars, and dead Americans, have the nerve to try and lecture President Trump, who has solved 7 global conflicts in 7.
Then, right after that, she launches into his bizarre tangent about how Donald Trump really wants to get into heaven. She claims he is worried, he is stuck at the bottom of the totem pole, so now he is trying to cut deals to secure his spot. Here's play this clip.
Do you think that we might not need the trilateral and that Zelensky and Putin might come to this conclusion on their own? And then as a follow-up, I know the president said on Fox News this morning that he's partially seeking peace in order to get to heaven. Was he joking, or is there spiritual motivation behind his peace deals here?
I think the president was serious. I think the president wants to get to heaven, as I hope we all do in this room as well. Annie.
What on earth is happening in the White House right now? This is completely unhinged. A New York Times reporter pressed Karoline Leavitt with a simple question. If the whole point was to get Europe, Putin and Zelensky on the same page, then why, when Putin called Trump, did Trump walk away from the European leaders and Zelensky, saying it would be disrespectful to Putin on speaker with everyone there? Why in the world would be disrespectful to Putin? And instead of answering, Leavitt just lashes out. The reporter, watch this.
Both Russia and Ukraine to make that bilateral happen as we speak. Sean.
Hey, if the point is to get everybody on the same page, why wouldn't Trump just take the call from Putin while the other leaders were in the room? He said it would be disrespectful to do that. But why is it disrespectful?
With all due respect, only a reporter from the New York Times would ask a question like that, Sean. The president met with all of these European leaders at the White House 48 hours after sitting down with President Putin on American soil. In fact, there was so much progress in the readout that was given to these European leaders immediately following his meeting with President Putin that every single one of them got on a plane 48 hours later and flew to the United States of America. And if I could just read for all of you some of the statements from those European leaders yesterday, you had President Zelensky himself saying it was a very good conversation. It was really good. We spoke about very sensitive points.
Then a reporter asked, why does Donald Trump believe that Putin just want to cut a deal on Ukraine specifically to make him happy? Does Putin really like Trump that much, or is he just playing him? And Karoline Leavitt jumps in with, well, everyone knows how strong Donald Trump is. He prevented nuclear war. India and Pakistan were about to go nuclear and Trump stopped it. He has already stopped 7 wars, including that nuclear one between India and Pakistan. Newsflash, India has said flat out that Trump did not do anything. He is just inventing fake war supposedly is so resolved. It's pathetic, it's weak, and it makes them look ridiculous. Play this clip.
President Trump, though, what do you think Putin's motivation is to try to do something for President Trump? as opposed to just resolving the conflict?
I think, as I just spoke to in my opening remarks, Kelly, Russia and all countries around this world actually respect the United States again. And the president is using the might of American strength to demand that respect from our allies, our friends, our adversaries all around the world. And we've seen that not just lead to progress with Russia and Ukraine, but also we've seen it in the closing of 7 global conflicts around the world as well. We've seen it with the release of hostages in Gaza. You've seen it with the end of the conflict between India and Pakistan, which could have resulted in a nuclear war if we had not had a president who believed in the strength and the leverage that comes with the job of being the president of the United States of America.
Then Karoline Leavitt warned the US might actually send troops into Venezuela, saying 3 warships and 4,000 Marines are already on the way. So maybe we will start a war in Venezuela and then call it a peace, deal afterward. That's why Trump can claim his 8th peace victory, or maybe he will just say it was going to be a nuclear war and he should into a stop it completely absurd. Here, play the clip.
You're welcome. Emily.
Thanks, Caroline. I wanted to ask about the 3 U.S. warships that are being sent to Venezuela, and there's 4,000 Marines on board. Are you looking at possibility of boots on the ground there?
What I will say with respect to Venezuela, President Trump has been very clear and consistent. He's prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. The Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. And Maduro, it is the view of this administration, is not a legitimate president. He is a fugitive head of this cartel who has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into the country. And with that, I will leave you all and we will see you later, if not tomorrow. And I look forward to taking more of your questions. Thank you.
Then Karoline Leavitt gets asked about the US taking a stake in Intel, meaning the government now controlling cooperation. So Trump posts, rants on social media, threatens American companies, and then sees ownership stakes in them. I do not know. Kind of sound a lot like communism to be, but sure, here's play the clip.
You're welcome. Sure.
Caroline, can you describe the president's perspective on taking a stake in Intel in exchange for federal grants? And is this are we expecting to see the White House make similar arrangements with other semiconductor companies and manufacturing companies?
Well, the president, he's been very clear about the need to reshore manufacturing that's critical to our national and economic security. That is especially in regards to chips and semiconductors, which is why the president has initiated the Commerce Department to conduct a study on semiconductors, a Section 232 investigation, so we can ultimately implement tariffs. And it's why our export license requirements remain in place as well. As for this 10% government stake deal, the Department of Commerce continues to work on it. I know Secretary Lutnick is working on it and ironing out the details, but the president wants to put America's needs first, both from a national security and economic perspective. And it's a creative idea that has never been done before to ensure that we're both reshoring these critical supply chains while also gaining something of it for the American taxpayer. You're welcome. Emily.
So now the spin is, Trump just a really creative deal maker? No, he is dictator taking or private companies, and media would not even call it out. Then Karoline Leavitt keeps rambling about how Putin supposedly only wants to make deal with Trump. She claims Putin would not talk to anyone else, but look now how on the phone with Donald, and suddenly Ukraine speaking with Putin again. Ukraine, what? There's no ceasefire. Trump said there had be severe consequences for Russia if they refuse one. But Russia has not agreed to anything. No trilateral deal with Zelensky and Trump. No new meetings. Nothing. Literally zero progress. Play this clip.
What has President Trump learned that tells him that Vladimir Putin would be willing to make a deal for him, for President Trump?
Well, the president has learned a lot, which is part of the reason he opened up this dialogue. The previous administration, who oversaw the beginning of this war, refused to talk. And President Trump has always said, in order to learn, in order to move the ball forward with diplomacy and towards peace, you have to have open dialogue. And so that's why the president has had several conversations by phone and, of course, an in-person meeting last Friday with President Putin. He also has talked talked to President Zelensky dozens of times, had him here at the White House yesterday, and he's understanding what both sides want, what both sides are going to have to give up. And he has always said, in order to get a good deal, both sides are going to have to walk away a little bit unhappy. So he continues to learn a lot throughout these conversations, which is why we've seen progress from both sides. And I would also just add, when it comes to learning and moving the ball forward, look at how both Russia and Ukraine have actually talked directly for the first time in many years, thanks to the efforts of this president and this administration.
Specifically for President Trump.
Then Caroline Leavitt shift to ranting about the federal government supposedly taking over states right on voting. She claims Washington is going to step in and control every single election in every state across the country. Here, play this clip.
Sure, go ahead.
So the president says that he's starting a movement to eliminate mail-in voting, but states administer elections, not federal authorities. So can you provide any more details about how the White House plans to eliminate that?
The White House continues to work on this, and when Congress comes back to Washington, I'm sure there will be many discussions with our friends on Capitol Hill and also our friends in state legislatures across the country to ensure that we're protecting the integrity of the vote for the American people. And I think Republicans generally, and the president generally, wants to make it easier for Americans to vote and harder for people to cheat in our elections. And it's quite mind-boggling that the Democrat Party could stand in opposition to common sense. He wants to ensure election integrity. There were great efforts that were made in 2024. I won't get ahead of myself for Hatch Act reasons to get ahead for the next election, but I can assure you this is a priority for the president.
Then she claims that when Donald Trump talks about cleaning up the slums in DC, he really means targeting neighborhoods and buildings he just does not like. Except he is not even deploying the National Guards to the areas where high crime. He is sending them to places like Foggy Bottom, Lagan Circle, and even near the Lincoln Memorial, all just to stage these authoritarian-style performances. And by the way, crime in DC is actually lower than in the very states sending their National Guard, like West Virginia, Mississippi, and Ohio. Anyway, play this clip.
The DC crackdown.
Sure.
First, I was wondering if you could clarify something President Trump said. He mentioned getting rid of the slums where criminals live. Was he talking about tents or permanent residential buildings? And then the mayor has expressed an interest in clarifying how much of a focus illegal immigration enforcement is as part of this crackdown. Can you say anything about that?
Sure.
Third, any preview on the beautification?
3 questions. I'll try to answer all 3 of them pointedly for you. First, when it comes to what you said and the president said, the slums of Washington, D.C., he's referring to the most dangerous communities, neighborhoods, and streets in the city where, unfortunately, violence has ravaged these communities and taken the lives of, again, far too many law-abiding D.C. residents. We know on July 5th of this year, just more than a month ago, a 3-year-old beautiful young girl was shot and killed in her car with her family in one of these communities, which is why there has been a surge, despite what many of you have been falsely reporting. And I believe it was the Washington Post who put out a map claiming it to be fact-based when it was just based on, I don't know, accounts that they've heard on the street, not actual statistics and data. So we went and reconfigured the numbers. And as I said, nearly half of all the non-illegal alien-related arrests have occurred in wards 7 and 8 in the District of Columbia, where we know, excuse me, there's the highest rate of crime. So we'll continue to do that. And what was your second question, Stephen?
Legal immigration.
Then Caroline Leavitt gets into this old back and forth with the Fox vote, insisting, you all know Putin never would have gone to war in Ukraine if Trump were president, right? Okay, let's be real. Under Trump, attacks on Kyiv and Ukrainian cities have tripled or even quadrupled, with far more innocent Ukrainians being killed than before. And honestly, if Trump were in charge, he probably would have just handed Ukraine over to Putin. Here's play this clip.
Jackie.
Thanks, Caroline. Since the president often says that this war would not have started if he were in office, and Putin confirmed that.
It's true. Do you accept that as true? The European leaders do.
Well,
and President Putin himself said that, by the way.
He did say that. The question I have, though, is what is the president going to do to ensure that these security guarantees last beyond him into the time when he is no longer president? And does that have to involve Congress at all?
Well, he understands the need for that, which he spoke to yesterday. And what's he going to do? It's why he's engaging in so many talks and so many conversations with both sides of this war with our European allies. It's why on the way home from Anchorage, Alaska, very late at night, when I know many of you on the press plane were sleeping and many staff were sleeping, the president himself was still awake at 2 o'clock in the morning talking to European leaders and NATO about how we can ensure a lasting peace and bring this conflict to an end. He has expended an incredible amount of time, energy, and effort into bringing this war to an end, and he remains determined to do that.
And finally, Jeff Bezos, yes, that conspiracy theories who somehow gets VIP treatment at the White House ask about these so-called security guarantees, like Article 5 level guarantees that Trump was talking about. Except there are no such guarantees. Putin has flat out said he is not allowing NATO, Europe, or the US into Ukraine. Putin himself made it clear. There are no Article 5 style security comments here. Play this clip.
Karoline, thanks so much. So a couple of questions regarding the status of these peace talks. Obviously, we saw the president and President Putin there in Anchorage. We saw the world leaders here yesterday with this summit. We've heard phrases like coalition of the willing. We've also heard Article 5-like guarantees. When it comes to the security guarantees, what is the current status of that? I know the president earlier today mentioned boots on the ground would be UK, France, Germany possibly, but unequivocally said no U.S. troops on the ground, but U.S. coordination. Can you elaborate on that, and what would the red lines be?
Sure. Well, you got to the heart of what I was going to say to all of you today on security guarantees, which is the president has definitively stated U.S. boots will not be on the ground in Ukraine, but we can certainly help in the coordination and perhaps provide other means of security guarantees to our European allies. The president understands security guarantees are crucially important to ensure a lasting peace, and he has directed his national security team to coordinate with our friends in Europe and also to continue to cooperate and discuss these matters with Ukraine and Russia as well.